silence in the pledge. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call today's meeting to order. We begin with the approval of minutes for June 15.
Motion to approve the June 15th minutes.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? I'm going to abstain. I wasn't able to
Hold
open
up, let's back up here. Was that the meeting that I covered?
June 15th, last week.
Okay, so
Yeah, you were president that
the week before.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
here, but I wasn't able to open that SharePoint file on my phone,
Gotcha,
so I wasn't
okay.
able to read
I
it.
didn't let you finish.
So I'm just going to abstain just for the fact I didn't read it.
So
That's all.
motion
No
and second.
controversy. Just couldn't open it. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 4-0. Thank you. We'll begin with commissioners' reports, comments. Vice President Baker.
Yeah,
And I'll
just
get with you on that SharePoint. I didn't.
welcome everybody. Nice rainy day here in Washington County. Tomorrow, or I'm sure another day this week, we'll have some great sun and get to mow our grass again. But I did have the opportunity to present a certificate to Clayton Anders down at Boonesboro High School, the football coach, legendary football coach, and I was joined by Mr. Burkett. Thank you for helping me with that. It was well attended, a great cause, a great reason for former football players and current, well, I guess all former now, football players to get to talk to their coach one last time, and I can only imagine the impacts that he's made on lives throughout the Boonesboro community over the years. And during the presentation of the certificate, it mentioned in there that he had been the football coach there since through 6 presidential elections. I thought that was a very good remark within the certificate. So just congratulations to him, and thanks to him, Mr. Anders, for everything he's done for our community and youth in Washington County. That concludes my announcements.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kiefer?
Yes, 2 things here. One, I'm not sure how the saying goes, but I've heard many times that spring comes in like a lion, out like a lamb, or maybe that's vice versa, but if it's in like a lion, out like a lamb, I know these last 2 weeks we've had some heavy rains and some storms that has caused some destruction to our roads and down trees. I just want to thank county staff who's been out there in our highway departments maybe a week or 2 ago in the south part of the county with some flood damage. That area saw a little bit more, thankfully nothing to the degree we saw a couple years ago. And with yesterday's rain, heavy rain, I know we had some crews out to clean up the debris. So I just wanted to thank county staff for that, everyone who was involved. Maybe it's more than just the highway department. So thanks for that. And of the events, I attended a couple in the last week. One, I wanted to mention Tri-County Council. I was able to attend with Commissioner Klein. And at that meeting, we approved some projects for, I believe, Hagerstown, Smithsburg, Hancock, all over the county, Boonesboro. Many projects were approved for all over Washington County at that meeting. So just want to thank Tri-County Council for supporting Washington County.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Burkett?
I would just like to thank county staff also and ask citizens to be patient while staff are getting everything back up and running. Last week I attended several meetings, including a meeting with the president of the school board, Melissa Williams, and had a very nice meeting discussing future funding needs for the school board. And on Friday, as Commissioner Terry pointed out, I was honored to go with him down to give Coach Anders of Boonesboro High School citation upon his retirement, and what a list of accomplishments, including Washington County's all-time most winning coach, and that he's been a positive role model to hundreds of players and students. And so that's all for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Morning. First of all, belated Father's Day to all the fathers. It was Sunday. It was also my birthday. Happy birthday to Randy. But I got shortchanged because Father's Day and birthday same day as like Christmas.
Yeah, you got one cake.
Yeah. So It was a great day. It was good weather, so I wanted to, all the fathers need to be recognized, on that day. I was able to, go down to the Pleasant Valley Raritan Fishing Rodeo, Saturday morning. A great turnout. I mean, it was just, that place was lined with kids trying to catch fish. It was well done, and it was a pleasure to be able to support that event. Also on last Wednesday, Rotary Club, I attended as a guest the Rotary Club meeting. Kelly Schultz was their guest. She gave a real nice, she's Secretary of Commerce. Tom Reifert was there with her as the Assistant Secretary. I think that's what his title is. And she gave a real nice talk. And I wanted to thank the Rotary Club for the invitation, Jerry Spessard. It was just a nice event. And then I forget what day it was, but I went to Black Rock, a Ravens Roost tournament. I helped sponsor that as an individual. Ravens Roost for their golf tournament. It went well. And then that evening, I was back out there for the chamber mixer, our chamber bash, which was hosted by us at Black Rock. It was well attended too. There was a lot of people there under the pavilion. Nice evening. And I really wanted to thank staff and PR. Everybody showed up and helped put that on, and the golf course staff. So they did a wonderful job, and it was a nice event also. I think that's it.
Thank you. I too attended the Tri-County Council meeting. It was up in Garrett County, so thanks to Commissioner Kiefer for traveling that distance. Beautiful day to be up in that part of Western Maryland. I too attended the chamber event at Black Rock. Our course looked beautiful. What a great afternoon. I did go down Saturday to the Pleasant Valley Raritan Fishing Rodeo for the South County folks, watching the kids. It was a good day to see families working together, mixing. A great day. I also represented the commissioners on Friday evening at the Juneteenth celebration downtown here at the plaza. It was well attended, and there was a lot of positive energy in the air, so I want to special thanks to all who organized to begin that first annual Juneteenth celebration. I do want to also, you always forget to add someone when you thank people, but with the recent storms, I know our highway department was out removing trees. Had several calls from some firefighters praising the 911 center. I was told at one time there was over 150 calls on their CAD screen, meaning calls were coming in left and right in the trees and accidents, and I believe our 911 call center performed admirably. So to all and any who I may have forgot, thank you for that work over the weekend or yesterday for the storms. That concludes my reports. We'll begin next with staff comments. Okay. Anybody out there? Okay, Krista, you want to go first? Thank you.
Thank you. I have two boards and commissions for appointment. I have the Commission for Women wishing to accept the recommendation to appoint Melissa Wilder to serve a first 3-year term, July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, and this is not a paid board.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I also have the Washington County Board of Zoning Appeals requesting to accept the recommendation to reappoint Jay Miller to serve a second 3-year term from June 1st, 2021 through May 31st, 2024. This is a paid board. Mr. Miller has missed a total of 1 meeting out of since his appointment, and that was due to a medical issue.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other staff comments? Legal?
None this one.
Administrator?
Just a few. Thank you, President Klein. Good morning, Commissioners. I just want to echo the Commissioners' comments. I wanted to thank everyone who worked so hard last night in response to the weather event. We had a lot of crews out. I want to specifically thank our Highway Department employees, our Public Works employees, 911 dispatchers, our first responders, and all other county employees that were out in any way helping with the cleanup. I also wanted to thank the City Light employees and the public work employees and the first responders in the city of Hagerstown. Power was out downtown starting yesterday afternoon. It got returned to this building around 10 p.m. last night. So I want to thank the city of Hagerstown for helping with that, and just thanks to all who were out. Some are still out there. There are still some roads that we're still trying to clear. When the wires were down, we had to wait for the utilities to arrive before we could clear those roads. So I know some are still out there, so thank you very much. The last thing I had, just wanted to remind the public that there will be no Board of County Commissioner meeting next week, June 29th, or the following week, July 6th. The next board meeting will be Tuesday, July 13th. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda, appointment of acting blueprint implement coordinator, Dr. Michaels.
Commissioner,
Oh,
just
Yeah, I was gonna say,
by way of introduction,
I think Kirk's gonna do just a brief
Okay.
introduction, so no, you
Yeah,
guys
come
can
on up,
but-
come on up,
Yeah, come on, we're
gentlemen.
just gonna, it's gonna be part of the whole discussion, so.
okay.
this is,
Kirk, we begin.
thank you. Good morning. This is something that is required by the Kerwin legislation. It contains language that states as follows. For each of fiscal years 2022 through 2026, the governing body of a county and a local school system jointly shall appoint a single implementation coordinator responsible for the implementation of the blueprint for Maryland's future by all government units operating in the county. So this is a requirement for the state and the Board of Education to make a joint appointment for the blueprint implementation coordinator for Washington County. I think it's fair to say that the law does not provide further guidance as to the structure, duties, or responsibilities of that position, but it is clear that an appointment must be made for the upcoming fiscal year, and we presume that further guidance will be coming from the state at some time.
Just a question, maybe you said it and I missed it. Is that a paid staff or appointment?
It would be in this circumstance.
It's one of the many things that comes with Kerwin. There is a lot of pages of law and very little understanding of exactly what's in Kerwin. I've been one of the superintendents that have been pushing for the last 6 months since, one, they passed Kerwin 2 years ago. The governor vetoed it, so they brought back a version 2 of Kerwin, really the same bill but rewritten with some new pieces in it. There's a lot of formulas in it. So I've been pressing our superintendent's group, State Superintendent Karen Salmon, request the people to try to better understand it, ask some of our delegation to understand it. The formulas are there, the law's written, the law's passed, the governor didn't veto it, and yet no one can really tell us a lot of the pieces about Kerwin. It is very, very frustrating. We're trying to use some of this federal grant money to bridge our way to some of the expectations in Kerwin and kind of look for when the funding will come through with Kerwin, or if it's for sure funding, or how the formulas work. There's a lot of theoretical things in Kerwin. Special ed's supposed to be cut in half through top-notch quality teaching and professional development. There won't be a need for as many special ed resources because there won't be that many special ed children. It's just one example. I don't know that's a philosophical thought, but I don't know if it's a reality. But in Kerwin, there is just, I think it's 2 sentences that mentions this joint appointment of a person. I see them as the point person for Kerwin. They would be the person that bird dogs, trying to find out answers to questions, attends meetings regarding Kerwin. There's a tremendous amount of accountability in Kerwin. We're going to have to trace every dollar back to individual students. For some of our concentration of poverty schools, the money will be allocated by the number of poverty students, but then you have to show how it was spent on each individual student. We're not even sure we understand how that can even happen. But again, very theoretical, very philosophical, how it's all written. This requirement is by June 30th, a person has to be jointly appointed between the 2 of us. 4 or 5 of the other counties have appointed supervisors and directors to this position. I don't know at this point what we want to appoint it to. It's not funded by Kerwin. It's not funded in our general fund at this point. I'm just simply recommending that to meet the letter of the law, that we appoint Gary Willow, Dr. Gary Willow, who's our Associate Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction right now. So it's not an extra position right now. It's extra duties to him to be our point person for at least a couple months until we can see how this thing develops. I think what's gonna happen is we're gonna have to add a project manager type position, a coordinator level position that'll track this stuff, keep straight what we're supposed to be doing this month. There are literally probably 1,000 deadlines in the Kerwin bill, almost monthly for the next 4 or 5 years of milestones you need to make. The career ladder, totally I don't know if it's misunderstood, it's not understood, it's at least not understood by myself, how that works, and it's all this information, and then it says, but it's gotta be negotiated with your local associations. How do you negotiate something that's mandated by law? But that's some of the words that are in Kerwin. It's just very, very frustrating to me right now. So right now, we're just trying to meet the letter of the law of June 30th. We don't know who to report the name of the person to. It's not even clear in the law, but I think we'll get something, hopefully sometime in July. They'll ask, who is your point person, your coordinator, jointly approved by the board, and I want to be able to send in a name. So what I anticipate happening is we'll be back to you in a couple months, job description, again, probably project manager-like role. We need it for fiscal year 22, which starts July 1st in a week and a half, 2 weeks. And it runs through the next 5 years that we need this point person.
So a summary would be Dr. Willow, per you, would assume this under his own, what he's doing now,
Correct.
and be the information gatherer, and then in a couple months possibly, you'd come back and Dr. Willow would no longer assume that position, and you'd want to
Correct.
concur on another person for that position.
Right, Dr. Willow doesn't have time to do all the needs of what's going on with Kerwin right now.
He's gonna act as your acting point person.
Yeah.
And then when the rules are more defined, you'll come back with another name for the tournament.
Yep, and we'd be open to any way you want to pursue that, but I just see, we'd create a job description, we would post that probably for the time being. I don't have the resources to pay for it out of the general fund, so we probably would use COVID grant funding to support the position.
When did you say that name was due by?
June 30th.
That's what I thought you said.
Yep.
And that's for the interim, temporary type of acting appointment.
Correct.
It's stated there.
I know there's a lot about the law that's ambiguous right now, but what, either for you gentlemen or our staff, what's the purpose of having the county commissioners approve this appointment too?
I have no idea.
I think my sense, Commissioner, is, there is an ownership part on the part of county government related to funding and responsibilities for education that's been withstanding, that it's standing law, but also it added to it under the Kerwin legislation. So I think the point is that it's someone that both bodies agree on, both the Board of Education and the Board of County Commissioners, to be sort of that go-between between all the government entities responsible for education within the community. That's my sense of what the legislation was going after.
That's kind of my sense too. When I read this, I was kind of surprised to see the commissioners' involvement in this, but because of the financial aspect of it, I think that makes sense. With that being said, I know it's so ambiguous, and it sounds like only one person at a time can hold this position. We can't appoint a co-coordinator, but I would like to see someone from our staff. I'm thinking of Sarah as CFO. Any matters that involve finances, I think it would make sense to have her in, a big part of that, those decisions or those interpretations of what to do. And again, so much is not clear at this point. We don't know what that might involve, but because, as you mentioned, finances are a big part of that, I would like to see Sarah involved somehow in those conversations.
Well, and I think, Commissioner, if it's, whether you want to have something in the motion or not, but I think I could share with you, and I don't think Sarah, I know she's sitting behind me, would disagree, but, she and I talk, I don't want to say on a regular basis, but when issues arise that involve funding and needs between the Board of Education and the county, she and I pick up the phone and we have conversations, and I think they're very amicable and we work well together, so I don't think you have any concerns there.
Okay.
I'll go ahead, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
I'd be fine with this, and I think anytime there's, just for the sake of time, if nothing else, we're 4 or 5, whatever days away. But I also think that when any funding comes up anyway, and I agree, Wayne, but when we hear about it anyway, and it's got to be explained to us. So, but then I'd want to hear if there was options, and hopefully we'd be explaining that too.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's where I feel.
For clarity and emotion, commissioners, do you want to add the mention of Sarah being included. Gentlemen, is that okay with you as well?
It makes a difference to
So if
us.
someone
We're
would want to
fine
make
when
a
this
motion
becomes
to
a
include Sarah Wayne, would you like to take the lead?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of Dr. Gary Willow as the acting blueprint implementation coordinator, along with adding Sarah Graves for any issues that concern, just to be clear, finances. If it's operational or education, that's your forte. Until such a time as additional guidance is received relating to the position and a permanent appointment or appointments can be made.
Okay, is there a second for that? Second. First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. I'm gonna back up a little bit,
Can I just, now, will you clarify with your board, because it is a joint appointment, will you clarify with your board at your next meeting what this board action took, including Sarah and that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It'll be fine.
all right, gentlemen, I know you're next, but citizens' participation was scheduled at 9:25, we were a little early. Is there anyone here for citizens' participation? Gentlemen, Mr. Alshire, Councilman, would you please come forward? Thank you. Please introduce yourself, even though we know who you are. Thank you.
How are you?
Fine.
I'm Kristen Alshire, 1217 Virginia Avenue. I don't know if I've ever been in front of this board on this side of the table saying that. As a citizen, I'm here actually as council member for the city. I have 2 items. The first is, I know that you have an item scheduled for 10:25 this morning. That is the local parks infrastructure funding. I was able to review the memo, and I just had a curiosity on that particular item. It was my understanding in speaking with the other counties and the state that that was sort of an additional allotment that was created this fiscal year by a majority of the legislature for POS funding, recognizing really that the need from the last 15 months pandemic to create additional allotment of funding within that particular subject area. And I know that most of the other counties, at least the ones that I've had a chance to contact, are treating it as such and reaching out to their municipalities to go through that repetitive process as they would POS funds. And I didn't see communication to that effect, but it appears that the funding's already been identified for specific park projects outside of the POS process.
What do you mean by outside the POS process?
Well, typically what happens when the POS funding allotment comes down from the state, the county and the municipalities have a level of communication. You submit and say, hey, you know, what projects do you have to put forth this cycle? And in this case, most of the other counties are doing exactly that same thing again. They're reaching out to the municipalities and they're saying, hey, what POS projects would you have submitted through this POS cycle? And so I know there's an additional allotment for this particular county, 1.5 million. I guess for me, I just had a curiosity why we didn't follow, or why we wouldn't follow that same process, given that the state made it fairly clear that, hey, this year, parks is a pretty important thing. We're going to administer this, and I know the state has to use a different moniker, if you will, for its name of the grant, but it's really additional POS funding, and so that's just the curiosity that I had, that that communication, I don't think.
Christian, I agree with you, and but I think what we saw was hopefully just for informational purposes. I don't know that anything's been decided yet, but I agree there should be more input into how that money's going to be spent.
I mean, let me just speak to that. So, I mean, the commissioners have not discussed this yet, so it's being brought to them to
Correct,
discuss
at
it.
10:25.
It isn't POS funds, it is being called something different, and they do talk about administering it in a similar fashion. Staff has looked at it and looked at our own county parks and some potential things that can be done with that. This board has not addressed that, so This is the first time they're gonna see that, so, I'm assuming there's gonna be some discussion about that when it comes up about how it wants to be used. It could be used, we could go through the same POS process, or we could use it, I don't think we're limited to that, but.
Certainly not.
But so this board hasn't, this will be the first time this board has had a chance to discuss it, so staff is bringing it forward, for a discussion today.
Okay,
Appreciate that.
thank you. Item number 2.
Sure. There was discussion last week, I believe, in regard to an increase in the density unit for a specific development out in the Robinwood corridor area. I know that there's, ongoing deliberation on that. There's certainly passionate feelings about that subject expressed across the gambit. And I guess for me, and I've asked our staff to present to us coming up, I believe, July 13th. All of us are likely aware of the level of development that has occurred out in the Robinwood corridor over the past couple of decades, and the impact that has on the sustainability of the water supply in that area, especially as it relates to emergency service fire flow protection. I would only ask this board give consideration and maybe some deference to the city to have some deliberation on that subject and the needs out in that area before we make a comment to the public that water supply is adequate in that area to basically double the size of the development where we have obviously seen struggle to be able to make sure that we provide sustainable supply out in that area. I hearken it to, and I've said this for years, the triangular effect of the city water system supply. We definitely have boosted flow, adequate coming from the Potomac. We have the 2 large towers in the west end. We at one time and are now working again on ensuring the adequacy of supply from the Edgemont Reservoir to the Brickner plant, which creates that sort of triangular effect of being able to sustainably supply the greater Hagerstown area. But clearly, until we have secured completion of those projects at the Edgemont Reservoir, our upgrades to the Brickner plant, which I think are at this point at about $16 million, and frankly, as cooperative governments look at the necessity of something similar to what we have in the west end, to have that water supply security on the east end, that we not be looking at developments of that magnitude until we can make those things secure. So that's the other thing.
Thank you.
And with that, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Chris.
Good to see you.
Returning back to our agenda item, Mr. Prohl, Mr. Brandenburg, please come forward.
Morning again, Commissioners. Jeff Pruitt, Chief Operating Officer, Washington County Schools.
Hi, David Brandenburg, Executive Director of Finance.
We bring before you today a fiscal year 2021 budget adjustment. As you know, as we come periodically with budget adjustments, these are adjustments that are requested by staff and approved by the Board of Education that cross the major categories. These were reviewed by the Finance Committee and approved by the Board of Education at its meeting last week on June 15th. And staff is able to answer any questions you may have about the adjustments in front of you.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
First and a second. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Dr.
A quick question, if I may, Commissioner
Sure,
Quinn.
go ahead, sir.
Not right now, but maybe at some point before our body next meets in 2 weeks, we earmarked $1.8 million specifically for the Hancock and Cascade Elementary Schools for capital improvements. Was hoping that maybe in that time frame, in the next few weeks, you can maybe share with us some ideas of how it might be used. Nothing set in stone or out for contract as of yet, but what your ideas are of how to use that money. I know I've received some questions from the community as we look at what's next for those schools.
Sure, and maybe from my benefit, a point of clarification, Commissioner, and maybe Ms. Hart can be helpful, because I haven't looked at the minutes from that particular meeting, but I seem to recall watching the conversation that it was earmarked for items not currently in the 10-year capital improvement plan. Is that accurate?
I'm not exactly sure how that motion, or it was reflected in the minutes, but I think the sentiment was it's additional money, so over and above anything you might already have planned for those schools.
Okay,
That's in your budget, so additional.
okay, we can review
We'll
that.
get we'll get clarity. We'll get-
And specifically, it's the elementary school in Hancock?
Yes, because that was the school that was impending a closure, not the middle high school. The building, not necessarily where the
building itself.
students
We'll get some
attend.
clarity from staff to you.
Okay, that's helpful.
John, is that okay? That way,
Great.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate being interrupted in the middle of all that. Thank you. Not a problem. Next on the agenda is maintain the dual structure of local authorities for addiction and mental health. We're a little early, but everybody's just walking in right now. You're, Mr. Rock, you're on stage.
Perfect timing.
Thank you very much. Folks, would you please introduce yourself in the matter, and welcome.
Hi, I'm Vicki Sterling, Director of Behavioral Health for the Washington County Health Department, Local Addiction Authority.
Hi, Rick Rock, Director of the Washington County Mental Health Authority, Core Service Agency for Washington County.
Good morning. I'm Alan Twigg. I'm the Executive Director at Emeritus Medical Center for Behavioral and Community Health. I'm also representative of the Washington County Health Advisory Committee and co-chair of Healthy Washington County.
Nice.
Please begin.
Okay.
Thank you.
We came before this group back in, I think probably October or November of last year to begin to talk about integrating, to whether to integrate local addiction authority and the local mental health authority under one local behavioral health authority. And at that time, we asked permission to establish a work group to begin to deliberate on that issue. And so we actually began meetings, it looked like probably in November at that point in time then. And we formed this work group, and Alan is here today as a representative of the work group, the spokesperson for the group. And I'll sort of turn it over to him to let you know what the work group did, how we progressed, and some of the things that we encountered to lead us to the decision that we're bringing here to you today.
Thanks. Yep. So the Behavioral Health Administration at the state level has been seeking functional integration at the local level. So that was the purpose for the work group. As we brought this group together with representatives from around the community, from providers, we shared what the current model is currently existing, the Core Service Agency, Mental Health, and the Local Addictions Authority, and why those two entities have existed over a period of time. We heard from a consultant from the Behavioral Health Administration in February that talked about the different ways that these similar bodies have been integrated across the state. And what we learned was that there is no one best model or way to do this. In fact, it's really dependent on the needs of the local people and providers in our community. So this work group developed a survey of providers in Washington County, and we heard loud and clear from the providers that there are really good reasons why both of these entities have existed. Having expertise in mental health or addictions. And I can appreciate, as a provider myself, having relied on expertise and guidance from both of these groups over the years. So we collected the feedback from the survey and from the providers. We used that information to develop the model that you should have in your packet, where these two entities would continue to exist as distinct entities. However, there would be an MOU where the two groups would work collaboratively where it makes sense to do so. So around strategic planning, around access to care and needs, around joint grant funding. These would be primary areas of collaboration and work together. In April of this year, we presented this information publicly. All that were in attendance, the feedback from providers and members of the public were in agreement. There was consensus around this model, and we did not hear any dissent or difference of opinion. So just finally, the ROSC, the Recovery Oriented Systems of Care Committee in the county, which currently exists, would provide some oversight of these two groups working together. So that would be the recommendation that we would bring to this body today, that this model of working jointly through a memorandum of understanding would be best used to allow both of these entities to continue.
Just a curious question, you might have already said it, and I might have missed it. Who would be like, when you combine all this and do all this, and who would be like the chair, or would there be a chair of the whole implementation?
So we had not talked about chair. They would continue to exist as a mental core service agency and a local addictions authority. The core service agency has a board of directors. They're actually incorporated. The ROSC would have oversight of working in collaboration around strategic planning or grant funding.
And ROSC is oriented systems of care, and we would have a formal collaboration underneath that committee, since we have the mental health piece and the addiction piece, and that's where we'd come together.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any comments, thoughts, motion?
I'd motion to approve.
Is there a second to?
Second.
Have first and second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
We'll report this back to the Behavioral Health Administration, that this process was followed, and then that it was approved through the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County then. So thank you for your time, and thanks to Alan for his presentation, and thanks to Vicki for her collaboration across this whole process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Next on our agenda is property and casualty insurance. Tracy, are you ready to present? Okay, we're a little early, but please come forward. Thank you, Mr. Robb.
Yep, thank you. Please introduce yourself in the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tracy McCammon, Risk Management Coordinator.
My name is Patrick Buck. I'm with CBiz Insurance Services. We're the broker for the majority of the county's property and casualty insurance policies.
So we're here to present the 21-22 property casualty insurance renewals. Before I get started, though, I do have some additional information that came through on Friday, so I wanted to give you the most up-to-date and current premium numbers. So I have new packets to hand out to you, if that's okay.
Thank you.
The recommended motion is to move to renew the liability policies with Travelers Insurance Company, the property and equipment policies with Local Government Insurance Trust, and the airport liability policy with Global Aerospace. Renewal quotes from insurance carriers are reflected on the attached premium comparison. Premium for cyber liability is not known at this time due to how volatile the cyber market is currently. Market conditions continue to shift towards a hard market following recent years of unstable underwriting results, primarily driven by increase in frequency and severity of large-scale losses. More sophisticated risk and specific industry sectors have become subject to greater underwriting scrutiny and ultimately increased premiums, such as law enforcement and cyber. Many insurers are requiring multi-factor authentication when writing cyber coverage. Unfortunately, at this time, the county does not use multi-factor authentication, and therefore, Travelers has denied coverage. Cyber coverage was marketed by CBiz. They did receive 20 denied responses due to the fact that we are not using MFA, and 2 responses offering low coverage for double or triple the cost of premium or deductible. Thanks to Local Government Insurance Trust working with Beasley Insurance, the county will have $2 million worth of free cyber coverage. I had asked for premium quotes for $5 million and $10 million in excess coverage. Legit has marketed the coverage and is down to 2 carriers, Corvus and Hamilton. There's uncertainty that a quote is attainable, though, at this point. Legit's team is advising that if they do receive a quote, it could be estimated in the $60,000 to $90,000 range. There is no guarantee that the county will be offered this excess coverage without the MFA being implemented. Unfortunately, due to the unstable market, premium numbers will not be available until closer to July 1st if the county was approved for the excess coverage. And if you flip over to your premium comparison, there's one other thing that I wanted to point out, and that was the reason for the updated information that I gave you. There was also an attached email from Legit that I received on Friday. I was originally told back in April at the renewal workshop meeting that our property and equipment insurance was going to be increased by 10%. However, their broker had done a 50% increase instead, and so they had to send out a letter to all the pool members. Legit did try to work with another broker. Unfortunately, that broker was not able to secure coverage in time for fiscal year 22. So they went back to their current broker and was able to work with them and reduce the 50% down to a 33% increase. However, if you look at our comparison here, you actually see a 25%. I had spoke with Scott Soderstrom on Monday, and he was actually working on our property and equipment portfolio at that time, and because of the amount of property we have and the equipment that we have, we're actually only going to see a 25% increase into our property. So wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. The physical impact, excluding the cost for the excess cyber, we're at $1,386,490. That's a 7.3% increase overall, but we're still within our budget amount of 8%.
Could I just ask a quick question? So
Sure.
a summary of this would be, Travelers is gonna provide our property and casualty insurance, but I guess one thing I don't quite understand yet, you're saying, the cyber's a big deal, everybody understands that. You're saying we at this point, we'd have 2 million?
Yes, Legit had offered us $2 million free coverage last year, and we took that, but we still had our Travelers insurance as well. Now Travelers is not going to cover the fiscal year 22 because of the MFA,
Right.
so they dropped us. So the only coverage that we currently will have July 1st will be the $2 million free from Legit.
And 2 million is not adequate.
No, it's not. That's why I had asked for quotes of excess coverage for
Right.
5 million and 10 million. I haven't received, when I spoke to Scott yesterday regarding the property increase,
Right.
asked him if he had heard anything yet. He said, unfortunately not. But he wanted me to be very clear that there's a possibility that we may not be offered the excess coverage and we may only be with
So
the 2
that
million.
that wouldn't mean replacing equipment that failed, that'd be cyber.
Right.
And I guess maybe I'm antiquated here, but 2 million, if something failed, is just nowhere near enough to cover a failure.
That, or if there was a ransom attack.
Right.
You know, a lot of times
That's what I
they
mean, a
ask.
hack or ransom or something like
Yes,
that.
exactly. So yeah, 2 million is not accurate or enough at all.
I see our IT director grabbed the mic. I don't know if you're here for this conversation or not, but what would multi-factor authentication involve? What would our cost be? What would?
Yeah, and I'll just say, let Josh speak on this. Yeah, staff has been looking at this because we're trying to figure out, and that's, so Josh
And kind of-
should have some answers for you as to how much it's gonna cost, and we're gonna have to come back to you with that. But we understand, we recognize that 2 million is not enough. That's why we were trying to seek excess, and we may get that. Unfortunately, with what's been going on in the world, even just recently, those prices are skyrocketing, so.
And we're not on President Biden's list of 16 no-nos to touch, so.
No, that's right. So Josh, go ahead, but.
I'll just touch, Josh O'Neill, Division Director of Information Systems, and I'll just touch briefly on the MFA, where we are with that, and what the costs are anticipated to be. Up until now, it's not been a funded project, and the expense is considerable. The Travelers Insurance Questionnaire, which we got far too late to even begin implementing MFA for this coming budget year, which required it, specified that email systems and financial systems had to be protected by MFA. In our case, that comes to, the email's the easy part, but the financial systems, Oracle, and possibly Munis, which is used for our utility billing and tax office. And we are working at getting quotes for that, and tying all that in. Some of the expenses aren't even known yet, but the basic implementation, without even including the financial systems, is going to be in excess of $80,000. And that's just a lowball number right out the gate just to turn it on.
And that only covers emails?
That only covers email, including the financial system becomes more complex, especially if Munis has to be covered by that because of the version of Munis we're on. That we have a preliminary estimate of $622,000 over the next 3 years to bring Munis to a version that could have MFA directly implemented on it. So that could turn out to be a considerable expense.
And I think we're still trying to give clarification as to whether Munis would have to be covered under that. So.
Yeah, the questionnaire was not very specific on how it needed to be covered. It merely said that email and financial systems had to be covered. We're trying to get some direction on exactly what kind of coverage that could be that might save us from having to expend all that money.
Could you explain this alternative?
I'm sorry, which alternative?
It says market bid, which would create a lapse in coverage.
So if this was not approved today, the only option that we would have to do would be go back out to the market and do bids again, which would create a lapse in coverage because we would not be ready and have coverage in July 1st.
It just seemed like this was a big jump in just 2 days. It was 4.9, now it's 7.3.
And that is because of the email that I received last Friday, because of the property going up 25%.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioners, there's a recommended motion. Thoughts, comments, and we're gonna work on the cyber security insurance.
And if a quote does come through for the access, I can bring it in the next commissioner meeting, and you can decide then what you want to do with the access if we are offered access.
It sounds like we don't have much of a choice because we're gonna run out. So I'd motion property and casualty insurance renewal.
For a second. Any further, have first and second, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, fire company audit and discussion. Sarah, please introduce yourself, guest, introduce, and the subject.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer.
David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services.
Richard Hopkins, Co-Chair of the Emergency Services Advisory Council.
And
Thank you.
I just want to point out the ARF reads Dale Fishak, President of the Washington County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association. He had a commitment come up that he could not be here, so we've asked the Chair of the ESAC to join us.
Commissioners, we were here a few weeks ago. We provided an update to the fire audits at that time. During the meeting, we did express an interest in extending the deadline for the information to be submitted by the volunteer fire companies to UHY, which is the contracted firm that is performing the audits. The extension to May 31st was the second or third extension that was provided to the companies to submit the information. We have seen great improvement over the last several weeks, but we're here before you today to ask permission to withhold reimbursement to any company that may still have outstanding items to the audit firm. And we'd like to hold that reimbursement until those items are provided. I'll turn it over to Dave for some additional comments because I think he would like to add some language to that request as well.
Right. So President Fishak and I have either directly or indirectly communicated on several different occasions to the member companies the importance of becoming compliant with the directed audits and agreed upon procedures. And, you know, we many times offered personal assistance. I offered Sarah's assistance, my assistance, to either help directly or redirect to get them help. So where I go with this is, at the end of the day, I think we need to establish with today's discussion and hopefully an action by the board that we set a timeline for compliance again, which is hopefully within a 7 to 14-day window, which would get us in front of your next July 13th meeting. And at that point, it'd be my position, my recommendation, and I believe the chair of the ESAC is here to agree to the same, and I can speak for the president of the association. He is in concurrence that we look to impose some type of financial penalty for continued non-compliance that I would propose would be considered similar, if not alike, to what we did back in the fall with the mass COVID directive in any department that would remain willful or non-compliant for a fine up to or including $10,000. You don't need to make that vote today. I'm just putting that out there for conversation. We would come back to you again for direction on something like that. But I think that would be a recommendation. I'd be prepared to make at that point if any of the departments choose to not get up to speed. You know, our last deadline that we issued to an email that I sent was March 30, and at which point we did discuss that this action today would be coming forth. And that date has since passed, and we've had about 3 weeks now for the companies that were still non-compliant, and there was more than a handful of those to get there. Most of them have, I'm happy to report, but we're still not at a positive place with at least one. And I think it's time for us to say, you know, we need you to produce, or there's going to be other ramifications.
I know from Emergency Services Advisory Board the other night I was there, that there was a unanimous, and that included some chiefs, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
There was unanimous support of that. I guess my concern is how many extensions do you keep going? Does the extension say it has to be completed or just comply?
Well, I think at this point, we understand that we've provided several extensions, and so the next step would be to impose.
Yeah, but if you put another deadline, does that mean the information has to be in, or are you just still asking them to answer you?
I think what we're saying now is within 7 to 14 days, please get the information in, and if you don't, on 7/13, we'd like to come back before the Board of County Commissioners for action of a penalty.
And there was a concern from the other companies that were there that if we have to comply, why don't they have to comply?
Right.
So it's like, we're doing our job, and I think what I saw, and you can correct me if you're wrong, Dick, they were in unanimous that if we gotta do it, you gotta do it.
Yes, absolutely, and we support any action that would be taken if necessary to get them into compliance.
Right.
Can I ask, so we have one company that hasn't submitted what we need, right? Just one company?
We do. There are 2 others that are working on finalizing their submission, and they're actively working with UHY to get them what they need in there as well.
Was the holdup that they didn't understand the email, or was the holdup that, what seems to be the holdup? Are they having trouble getting a hold of their accountant? Why?
With this last company?
Yeah, like, do they have a legitimate reason to be late again?
No, I don't think so. I would say that company, from everything I heard from the UHY representative, has made no real effort to try to comply. You know, they're not engaged. They don't remain engaged. There's an online, it's called a SuraLink, that was provided to each company. They have not engaged that link since March 6th, March 8th, whereas every other company has done that and beyond that. So we're just not seeing the effort on behalf of the department to take this at the level it needs to be. And I think the message here today is we have to move on, and this company needs to be in compliance, or we need to take subsequent actions. We're hopeful that any of these steps, and we were hopeful before today, that just the pleading and the issuing of deadlines and then the conversation about coming before the board on the 22nd will be enough to get the companies to realize that, you know, this is not an option. This is a directive that came from this group, and it was funded in county budget, and it is executed through an RFP. So, you know, we need to move this forward, and there needs to be an understanding that you will comply, and if you don't, there are other steps, and they will become an escalating step moving forward, to including at some point, you know, maybe the money gets redirected somewhere else to where there is an accountability for it. We don't want to be difficult with this process, and I think we've given them all the tools to be successful, at least the intent to do that. So, Commissioner, I've personally reached out to at least this last department through board members and other members and pleaded with them, please don't put us in this position. And I've tried to put that personal empathy out there, and we've just not gotten there. And they have my phone number, my cell phone number as well. So I don't know what else we can do short of going in the station, opening up their books ourselves and completing it, which if that's what they ask us to do, we probably would have tried to do that too.
Are they given any reason at all, or just not communicating?
Not communicating, my understanding.
That's my understanding.
I mean, I would say the staff and the auditors have reached out to these companies throughout this entire process. So they know.
Yeah.
And on a number of occasions, the volunteer companies have reached out to both Dave and myself for direction, and we've been able to provide that and move them forward in the process, so.
Well, I can give you just last week, one of the companies sent me an email directly saying, please, did you get my information that we're compliant now? And I said, yes, we did. I forwarded that to Sarah. So that kind of information exchange is just not occurring, and specifically with at least one department.
So you're recommending 7 to 14 more days, and then that's it? Then you'll be
I would
ready.
recommend today we suspend funding to this department effective immediately.
Yeah.
No penalty. They still, if they comply in 7 to 14 days, their money comes. But I would be asking Sarah and the group to come back to you in 7 to 14 days, whatever you recommend, if they are still non-compliant on July 13th with some type of punitive action. Could be a penalty, whatever you choose. That decision's up to you. I'm just giving you ideas for conversation.
Commissioners, that sound fair?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that, only because I know they can call you, the auditing company. There's so many ways that someone like me could reach out and say, how do I do this?
And we will still today, if they call us today, we will engage them and help them get compliant in the next 3 weeks.
7 to 14 days. So you're
And
giving them
if
one
they're-
opportunity to complete this without penalty.
Yeah.
And if they're really, really close, you're not gonna bring it in at all?
No, there's a couple here that are in that position, and we didn't bring them forward because they are close and they are engaged, and they're engaging weekly. It's not like 3 or 4 weeks are going by and they're not engaged until somebody jingles the bell again. They're engaged, and they're not on this list because they are working to be there, and they've got most of the information in as well.
All right, Commissioners, is there a motion to go with that? Is that what you want?
Yeah, I'm fine. One last question. How many total companies, are 20 that are under this?
There's 18 fire companies
Right, okay.
under this.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the EMS companies in the association last year.
Okay, is there a motion based on Dave's recommendation of 7, 14 days, no penalty, and you'll come back if
On the
it hasn't been adjusted? Is there a motion for that?
We're going to suspend the funding, right? That's part of it.
Suspend the funding.
Okay, did I
And
say?
if they're really close, he's not even gonna bring it.
Correct.
Yeah, I would motion that based on our conversation here.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
I appreciate
We're gonna go back to citizens' participation. A person was a little late getting here, but we want to afford you the opportunity to speak. So as soon as they clear, come forward. Okay, ma'am, state your name and address, and you have the
My name
opportunity
is
to
Kathy
speak.
Scott. I live at 17,000 Shepherdstown Pike in Sharpsburg, Maryland. My farm is the lane access, the access point for the Sharpsburg water plant. Over the past 2 years, my lane has been tore up by county vehicles, including dump trucks and heavy equipment. Maintenance to my lane is the responsibility of the county. This year alone, there were 39 potholes. When I complained to the head of county maintenance, the potholes were fixed. However, I had other issues to address at that time, which I told him about. And he just told me my lane was fixed and that was that. Nobody else would do anything about it. My lane is so full of rocks on the sides that I cannot mow. I also told him I had to pay $319 to have my mower fixed from last year's rocks. That may not seem like a lot of money to you guys, but it is to me. My mower cost me $2,600 2 years ago. And I've already spent $600 to get it fixed from the county putting rocks on the side of my road, or my lane. And I would like for my mayor to last me for a while, since I am a single income senior citizen with $1,100 a month coming in from Social Security. That is it. These rocks and stones have been put there by the county plowing my lane at the drop of a snowflake. They dig it down, they throw the rocks aside, which makes it, I cannot plow, I cannot mow, and I have pictures here of what my lane looks like now, that I cannot mow it. I've also contacted I also contacted the county administrator. They just told me don't mow it. So guess what? Sooner or later, head of weed control is going to send me a letter telling me.
I mean, not to interrupt you, I have not talked to you about this, but.
Well, somebody called me and told me that they were the county administrator.
Okay.
And I told them that I could not mow it. They just simply said don't mow it. So guess what? Now the weed control is going to send me a letter telling me that I have to mow my weeds, and I can't do that because of all the rocks that are in my lane. So the county over the years has also made my lane 3 feet wider on each side. They just keep on digging it out further and out further and out further. So much so that there might be a foot on my lane going out towards Sharpsburg that I can actually mow, which I can't mow anymore because of the amount of rocks that's being laid there. I don't know what else to do at this point. I mean, if something is not resolved with my lane, I have no other choice but to speak to my attorney and see what steps I have to take in order to get my lane fixed, because the county is responsible for the fixing, to maintaining it and making it look decent. And I can't make it look decent with the amount of rocks that's laying in it. And
Ma'am,
again,
what's your
I have like
address?
40 pictures here.
What's your address?
17,000 Shepherdstown Pike.
I think, Mrs. Scott, what we'll do, we'll get the county administrator and get staff down there to remedy this problem.
I've asked and asked and
Okay.
asked for somebody to come down there and look at this with me, and nobody will do it. It's like nobody cares.
Well, it's my understanding staff has come down there on a number of occasions. On the
Hold
road.
on.
I mean,
They
to say they haven't been down is not accurate. Now, whether there's still issues, we'll be happy to come down and take a
They
look
come
at
down
those.
and they fix the potholes.
Right.
However, they're already coming out
Okay,
because
so-
the county just runs.
Well, it'll be my,
Right.
I understand I'm out of time, but I have another issue. I have 4 grandchildren that live with me. 2 older, 1 8-year-old, and 1 3-year-old grandson that are out on golf carts, power wheels, 4-wheelers. The county flies through my lane like a bunch of flippin' idiots. I would like for somebody to inform the county that that is my home. It's my property. You guys may have the right to use it, but it's still my property. One of them's gonna get hurt if somebody doesn't do something.
all right, we'll get people down there immediately and take care of your concerns.
Thank you. Here's your
Thank you,
pictures.
thank you.
Is that under you, Andrew? Does that fall under your
It's
department?
under environmental management. It's access to the, right, the water plant.
Let me see.
It's under environmental management.
Yes, that's my home. This lane here coming in from Sharpsburg Pike into my lane.
And I'm not
You say
sure,
it does
I'm not sure
fall
what the
under you.
ownership interest is in that lane, but I know we have had staff, go down.
Yeah.
Staff
Does
has
that
gone
fall
down-
under your
Staff has gone
department?
down and maintained that.
No, it's maintained by
Environmental management.
Okay, well, Mrs. Scott, you got our attention, thank you very much.
Because it's access to the water treatment.
Okay, thank you.
Water plant down there.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll now return back to our,
Yeah, she just pointed it out, it's down here and
yeah,
through
we'll
here.
return back to the regular agenda.
There you go.
Bid award, Public Safety Training Center, that's what's next, am I correct? Rick Curry, it has schedule. Oh, excuse me. Am I right? That's the next agenda item? All right, we'll wait and see where, pause for a moment, recess. What are we doing? We're waiting on, Mr. Curry.
Okay.
So we just have quite a white tree there, we don't own anything, and we don't have no, I was thinking if we guy's in shape.
Sorry about that.
Well, you're not late.
Matter upstairs.
You're early. You're early.
Yes, sir. Oh, my.
A few moments, gentlemen. See, now you're waiting on us.
I'm good. How are you, sir? Any of you all lose power last night? No?
A lot of trees taking a nap, so to speak.
I know I come through Hagerstown from Black Rock about 5:30 and the lights were, it was quite a traffic mess.
Yeah.
I mean, the stoplights or the lights were out.
Robinwood, Edgewood, all those, Mount Etna, Edgewood.
All right, gentlemen, welcome. Please introduce yourself and the matter to be discussed.
Good morning, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing.
Doug Mullender, Sheriff.
David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services.
Subject before you is bid award 1500, PUR 1500, Public Safety Training Center Audio Visual System. Recommended motion to award the bid to the responsive bidder, Ford Audio Video Systems LLC of Tulsa, Oklahoma, who submitted the lowest total base bid amount $431,302.68, and alternates A through I in the amount of $657,003.85 for a total sum of $1,088,305.53. The project was advertised in the various medias as listed on the ARF. We received 2 bids on June the 9th, which were open. The bids have been evaluated and was in order. Also, the engineer's estimate for the work for the base bid was $450,000, and for the alternates A through I, the engineer's estimate bid was $700,000. Phase 1 of the project is completed as of 2020. Phase 2 will be completed in the spring of 2022. The audiovisual project is a 230-day consecutive calendar project with anticipated notice to proceed in July of 2021 with a completion date of February 2022. There are liquidated damages in the amount of $500 a day for work that's not completed beyond the completion date. We have the fiscal impact of it being a CIP budget, which has money in the budget for the project. We have concurrence from the Budget and Finance Director on the fiscal impact, and we have concurrence on the project from the Director of Engineering, and also you have the bid tab matrix of the 2 bids that were received. Are there any questions?
Commissioners, comments? Questions?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Here a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Curry, I believe you're up again. Please introduce yourself in the matter. Thank you, gentlemen.
Again, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing.
Rich Eichelberger, Director of Construction.
The subject here is the contract award PUR 1504, Construction Building Inspection Services Requirements Contract. Recommended motion, move to award the primary contract to Development Facilitators Incorporated of Millersville, Maryland, based on a response proposal that was dated May 26th of 2021, with the lowest price proposed amount of $167,040, and also permitted in the RFP to award a standby contract to A. Morton Thomas of Baltimore, Maryland, based on a response proposal with a price of $218,200. Also, the specific unit price and estimated hours are no maximum guarantee. This is a requirements contract, will be utilized as needed. The service under the contract consists of construction, building, and services, as well as field and laboratory services. It could also be traffic signals, roads, bridges, drainage structures, water lines, sewer lines, buildings, or public improvement in projects. Duration of the contract is 2 years, beginning June 1st, tentatively June 1st, 2021, with an option of 3 one-year periods. Under the contract, other jurisdictions are also allowed to use this contract. As I stated before, this is a requirements contract which will be used as needed. There are no maximum or minimum hours to be awarded for this. Also, the RFP was advertised as we normally do in the various medias. There were 3 firms that submitted proposals. The proposals were evaluated. Those 3 firms' proposals were opened. As a result of the evaluation of the coordinating committee, and funds in this budget for various projects in this account. And also you have the attachment of the price proposal tabulation sheet. Are there any questions?
Commissioners, comments, questions?
Motion
To award?
to award as presented.
Is there a second? Second. A first and a second, any further discussion?
Yeah,
Gary?
just one question. So basically, this is, we're subcontracting our inspection services, correct?
Part of them.
Yeah.
This is to supplement like our CIP
Right.
projects. We have 3 CIP inspectors who are county employees. This is to supplement those other projects that are outside of the limits that we would be able to provide.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's on an as-needed basis, so depending on the amount of projects currently.
Now, if these people, just another quick question, I'll let it go, I'm just curious. If these people, if you're subcontract somebody from another state and they come in to oversee a project, do we offer them room and board, and do we put them, is that in the bid?
No,
Okay.
sir.
So there's nothing beyond
No,
that?
it's just the services required for inspection.
Okay.
Any other questions?
It says funds are budgeted in various project accounts for these services. Do you have any idea what that total amount was and how far under that amount this came in at? Or is that to be
I think we would have to, I mean, Sarah might be able to glean some research.
I'm just wondering how much money was saved. Or could we hire a person at less than $167,000?
We may not utilize all of that cost. It's just for bidding purposes to provide a benchmark to evaluate one against another. So we'll use it as needed. It may not reach that. And all of the projects, go ahead.
And also, this serves as a budgetary model for future projects with this contract in place, because we know what that cost is if we have to use an inspector. So that gives us a benchmark to get that budget prepared.
And the projects, they're budgeted separately to perform each capital project in itself. And so there's not necessarily a specific number that we have that for each project for the inspection services, because quite frankly, we'll charge the inspector's time to the project, and then this would be for anything outside of that scope.
That's correct.
So to your question, you're looking for, a savings, but this amount that is before you may not even occur.
Yeah, I mean, typically right now, I do not. I do not, because it varies from year to year, because it all depends on
The project.
amount of projects that we need to fund outside of our own internal staff. And right now, we do not utilize these inspectors completely year-round, so there's where some of the cost saving comes in because of the particular projects they're working on, some of the roadway projects, during the winter months, they're not utilized by us, so we're free of that for several months, so there's where some of the cost savings
All
comes
right,
in.
I'm hearing no more questions. I've had first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I vote thank you.
Thank you.
Rick Curry, looks like you're here again. Please introduce yourself and the matter and your guest.
Again, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing.
Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
Subject is bid results, award update, natural gas services to Washington County Government, Washington County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association. Recommended motion move to enter into the record the results of the contract award made on April 18th, 2021 to Direct Energy Business Marketing LLC, doing business as Direct Energy Business of Islam, New Jersey, of the bid for Washington County Public Schools for natural gas supply services at the following rate: the base bid price, all in fixed price, to the city gate for 48 months of service, tentatively beginning July 1st at 0.3734 per therm. On March the 9th, 2021, this board approved entering into a cooperative purchasing effort with Washington County Public Schools, the appointed primary representative and secondary representatives, acted on the behalf of the board to enter into a contract immediately following the bid opening of the natural gas supply services. The objective of the co-op was to allow one organization, which was Washington County Public Schools, to issue a solicitation for the natural gas supply services, the specification for which would represent the needs for both participating organizations. The natural gas requirements for Washington County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Companies were also included. Each participant will make their individual award to the successful bidder. Bids were received from the sole pre-qualified supplier on May 19th. The bid evaluation committee discussed the bid immediately following the bid opening pricing deadlines on May 19th. Representative of Washington County Public Schools and Washington County Government, on the acting on behalf of Washington County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association, agreed to award a contract to the recommended above. This is a 48-month contract, and the savings, you can see the funds that were budgeted last year and the funds budgeted this year for this contract. And also you have the breakdown of the result of that contract attached to the ARF. Are there any questions?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. I vote, thank you very much. Mr. Eichmann, I believe you're up next.
Yes, thank you, Andrew Eshelman. I also want to recognize our Public Works staff who were out last night and today and will continue to do so to clean up after the storm. So I know there was some comments earlier by the board. I appreciate those, and I'm sure our staff does as well. I'm here before you to discuss the FY22 local parks and playground infrastructure state spending, looking for some direction and consensus on what to do with that funding. The county is set to receive $1.5 million in state local parks and playground infrastructure funds. That was included in a state capital budget, House Bill 590, for parks and playground infrastructure. So as I said, we're seeking some consensus and direction as to what to do with that funding. This is bond funding that's coming to the county administrative units who manage local parks to design, construct, and capital equip indoor and outdoor park infrastructure. And it's for other capital eligible projects that enhance recreational amenities that aren't included but limited to trails, playgrounds, recreational facilities. These funds shall be encumbered during the state fiscal year 22, which begins July 1st, 21 and ends June 30th, 22. The Maryland Department of Natural Resources shall administer the funds in a similar manner as program open space grants for development projects, with the exception that the matching requirement is waived and there are more specific requirements related to general public access. So more or less it's 100% funds, there's no local component. To be eligible for funding, projects must be located on land owned or controlled by the local government. They must design, construct, and/or capital equip park infrastructure, be 100% accessible to the general public, and have a useful life expectancy of at least 15 years. It's worth mentioning that in the most recent county parks survey, improved facilities, meaning pavilions, bathroom spaces, playground equipment, that kind of category, was the second most requested item behind walking and hiking trails. Washington County has many park facilities that were constructed in the 1970s and 80s and are in need of modernization and improvement. Staff discussed with the Recreation Parks Board is proposing the funds be used for modernization efforts to improve patrons' user experience in parks that are geographically located throughout the county. I did list some parks, if we were looking on the county side, that those funds could be used. But again, ultimately, as far as how those funds are spent and where is up to this board to provide some discretion. So more or less what we need to do from an administrative standpoint to decide where we want to spend the funds, how. I would need to submit a funding and project list to get back to the state as soon as possible in the fiscal year, so those projects can get underway in the current year.
Andrew, this really doesn't have anything to do with, it's sort of POS, but it's not POS,
Yeah,
right?
it's capital funding, but they're more or less just using the process administratively for how we fill out the forms for program open space to spend money that way, because they're not going to reinvent the wheel.
I see you have the parks you just put down there. You know, you have Camp Harding, Big Pool, I guess, Clear Spring, Devil's Backbone is another municipality area, but it's county parks. How would you address Mr. Alshire's concern?
I mean, they're not wrong in asking for it, and each county is free to decide how they want to spend those funds. I do think it's worth noting there are different pots of money for different uses. So yes, POS is something that we will have next year. Some of what we're looking to do, if you look at our capital budget, about $250,000 is for these types of projects. So we're more or less bumping up what we would have in next year. The POS process, the way we currently do it, takes about 7 months. That could be condensed. So you want to do something that's fair. You want to do something that gets the money out quickly. And how do you do that? So in terms of other programs that are available, this does come to the county. There is other money that's available to the municipalities. It's not as large. It's called Community Parks and Playground. In the FY22 budget, there's $5 million. So for instance, Hancock, they're going to be getting their splash park. $200,000 is from that pot of money. I think Williamsport's getting some playground equipment as well. So there are other things, but yes, it could be shared. It could go to the county, but the intent is it's going to be spent in this next year.
I guess I would like to see you do what's very critical now, a roof maybe or something very critical. It won't be hard to spend $1.5 million.
Correct.
And then maybe branch out a little bit. I guess we have to fix what's critical in our county parks, but will that take $1.5 million if you just made a critical list?
I mean, I did a budget for these, and it doesn't go as far as you think. I mean, playground equipment is expensive. You're looking at about $200,000 to upgrade playground equipment, and we have in those parks 20 plus years ago they bought the same playground set, and it's all breaking at the same time. And if you've been in Camp Harding, you'll notice the slide's missing because it's broken. We can't get replacement parts. So it doesn't go as far as you would think. Now, what the city was asking in their POS request that didn't get funded was some playground equipment, was some roof repairs.
Right.
So as you were talking about, I mean, the projects are, there's more restrictions on it than even to POS, right? And
Correct. I mean, the 100%. So I don't think this would be open to the schools. We have joint use agreements that we work out with the schools, but those facilities aren't open during school hours, so they wouldn't meet the intent. So I think in this case, you're talking about the county could roll with it because it's coming to the county. We could divide it up and give it to the municipalities, but that's probably where it would end.
Obviously they'd have to meet all those requirements, and it'd have to be done in the.
Yeah, the money needs to be encumbered. So I don't know that it would need to be, complete and open, but they want to see that money's being spent, it's, you know, in the works. So something that has a lot of design time, probably not the best project for this money. It could be eligible, but it just might not meet the timeline.
So you just want us to have a consensus today to move forward, and you're gonna bring back a list of the projects?
Well, I guess I need to know, do you want it to just be the county? Is it municipalities? Administratively, you know, the POS process is a little bit long to go through. A Parks and Rec Board traditionally doesn't meet during the summer months. So if you said here today, come back with a recommendation for in the county, I think we're prepared to do that. But the question is, how large do you want this to expand?
And if you wanted to reach out to the municipalities, I think what I'm hearing is the POS process is a long process, and we'll be starting that again for next year.
I send the letters out in October.
Right, so, you know, I don't think we have to go through that process. I mean, if you were gonna, if you wanted to include the municipalities, I guess we could just reach out to them directly, but, and not go through the POS process. You mentioned doing a condensed version of it, but I'm not sure what that means. It maybe not be 7 months,
It would
maybe it's
essentially
3
mean I'd
months.
have to send a letter out and I would say your applications are back. We're not gonna do, you know, in-person meetings. We'll just take the applications, review it, and then decide what things we think are, you know, merited of this funding.
And the last thing I'll say is, when Andrew came to me with this, I had some of those same thoughts that you had, is that, you know, this is money that we were not expecting. So I wanted to try to put it into projects that would be a long-term investment in county parks. That's how we got to this point. There may be some long-term investments, things that couldn't be done even in municipalities. But I think when I look at, you know, when we get additional monies like this, you know, I want to make sure that we use those on projects that we wouldn't necessarily fund, but they would serve our citizens. So that's how we got to this point. So we are looking for direction today, whether we can use that money in county parks, or as Commissioner Wagner suggested, you know, identify the critical needs, and then if we have additional funds, to reach out to the municipalities and see if they've got some of those same similar things. But
Yeah, I would sort of like that, critical funds. Just me talking, critical funds. I'd fix your, you know, the major things that are just falling apart. You might have $3 million worth of that. I don't know. But I guess I would have to depend on your department's expertise on what the money should be, where it should be spent. I mean, I'd like to spread it out through the municipalities, but we got to take care of, even for liability purposes with playground equipment, those kind of things. There's liability there, I'm sure.
Andrew, do you know of the proposed park locations? I appreciate that you or whoever came up with that list kind of picked the locations all throughout the county. You got the west end, the east end, the south end, the center of the county covered. Would we be able to touch all of those parks, or do you think our money would be limited to only 1 or 2 meaningful projects?
Of the list that I showed there, I think we could touch something in all of those. We're not gonna do work somewhere where it's not needed done. So for instance, a Devil's Backbone. You know, some of this we're looking at improving the user experience. That park's busiest time is during fishing season, but our bathroom facilities can't be open. We don't have, you know, heat in there. So the question would be, can we renovate the bathroom facility, you know, maybe provide some additional amenities that it could be open instead of a porta pot. So that's an example. But, you know, the pavilion may be in okay shape. It's solidly built. We don't need to touch that. So yes, some of the parks would need more done. You're looking at more or less an overhaul. They're listed alphabetical, but it almost works out where they're kind of listed in the order of need as well, I would say.
But they've hit 3 or 4, like you just said. There's at least 4 or 5 municipalities within their physical,
yes,
like Smithburg or Clear Spring or Big Pool.
And it's tough because the way we're set up, you know, Hagerstown is the largest municipality, so they are the hub. But you look at municipalities, Clear Spring Park is a county park, but it's in the town.
Right.
You know, there's only several hundred people in Clear Spring. So when you look at funding formulas, it doesn't really work too well for the county because we have, you know, 60% of the population resides just in the county outside of municipalities. But actually, when you look at historically on the POS side of the funding, we're only keeping about 35% for ourselves. So some of it is, yes, the municipalities, I'm sure people from the county use those facilities and we try to understand that in a normal process. But when you try to just do it on a funding formula basis, it gets hard because we have a lot of municipalities that are very small. They would actually probably not end up faring as well if we went that route based on population or some other metric.
Okay. Commissioners' thoughts?
Yeah, all of these projects that you have listed here, that's exactly how they were discussed with the Parks and Rec Board, correct?
Correct.
I mean, I'd be okay the way it's presented.
And all we're asking for is a consensus today. It's not a vote.
Can you
Well-
reach out to Elshire and see if he had a particular thought, or?
Yeah, I mean, I know they got their playground infrastructure partially funded. We tried to get them that, and then they had a request for a roof replacement, I think at Fairgrounds, and a pavilion at Mills Park. So again, the other way of looking at it is it just easier administratively to do this, and then we come back next year for POS, and some of the requests that the county was gonna have, we no longer need because we
Right.
took care of it.
Right.
So some of it is, do they need it now? How
Or
important
it
is
can
it
be
to get it
addressed
out?
later under another program.
Yeah, but, I mean, we communicate with the city on it. Ultimately, it comes down to, you know, what direction do we wanna
All right,
go
Commissioners'
with it.
comments, direction for,
I'd just say move me
Are we
personally.
approving this today?
it's a
for him
consent,
to
it's
go
a,
ahead and start?
it's a consensus to give him to move forward with a plan, not a
What would
vote.
happen is, I think if I have consensus, I would come back with more specific projects and a budget adjustment. Until that happens, you're not really
As
authorizing
listed,
anything.
as listed on your ARP, it
Yeah.
just says
All
no
right, I mean,
vote,
yeah.
I
it
mean,
says
the whole
consensus.
point, I mean, obviously Kristen came in and I mentioned this to him when he was in here, is that the whole point was to come today to talk to the commissioners and see what direction you wanted to go, so, cause I know you haven't seen this before, and we weren't expecting.
We didn't get it till May, is kind of when we found out.
Maybe Andrew was expecting this money, I wasn't expecting this money, so, so we weren't expecting, we didn't know till May, so we wanted to give you an opportunity to discuss it and give us some direction on where you wanna go.
I got a consensus to move forward.
So we go,
All right, move forward.
I agree. I just hope the final outcome again includes all corners and stretches in the center of the county as well.
Yes.
For a fair approach.
Thank you very much.
I think it will, and I think it was Andrew didn't say, but I mean, I think you and your staff came up with this list, so he was thinking countywide as to.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the intent was that it's something that you want every citizen to receive some benefit.
Right.
And so this would achieve that
Right.
within the county.
Including the citizens within the municipalities too.
Yes.
All right, thank you. I believe you're up next again.
I'm still here.
Please,
Before you this time, seeking a construction bid award for HVAC work at the Board of Elections building at 17718. So that's seeking a motion to award the contract to the lowest responsible bidder, MS Johnson Company of Hagerstown, for the amount of $295,380, which includes the base bid plus alternatives 1 and 2. This project was advertised in the Herald Mail, on the county's website, and on the state of Maryland's website, email and marketplace Advantage. 2 bids were received and opened on Wednesday, June 9th, 2021, and listed below. The bids were evaluated and the low bid is in order. The engineer's estimate for this work is $300,000. The existing system is insufficient for the current heating cooling needs for that facility and the renovated space. This will be the final phase of HVAC work in the building. There's 90 consecutive calendar days to complete this work, and anticipated notice to proceed in July. That would mean a completion date in October, and there are liquidated damages in the amount of 250 days per calendar day for work beyond the completion date. The funds for this project come from the Systemic Building Account, BLDO 78.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you
you.
very much. Next up, application for zoning text amendment. Jill Baker, please come forward. Introduce yourself in the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am Jill Baker, Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. As stated, last week we had a public hearing on a text amendment to the Washington County zoning ordinance regarding short-term residential rentals. We left the comment period open for a week. I have not received any further comments from the public. Just as a reminder that this did go through a public input meeting with our Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission has recommended approval. I don't have anything further to add at this point.
assume you didn't receive any comments.
Was there any fees, I can't remember, was there any fees was this gonna increase any cost to the people who wanted to use their houses in this way?
The only fees that would be associated with it would be the typical zoning certification fees or permit fees if they had to renovate or anything like that, but those would be in effect anyway.
So if I wanted to open up my home, if I had an extra room and I wanted to rent that out for a night or two a month, I would have to get special approval to do that?
You would seek a zoning certification from the county, yeah.
And then would there be certain laws that would require me to bring stuff up to code for commercial use?
Could be.
Well, this establishes these uses as permitted in certain zones, and in some places they're permitted as of right, which means no additional zoning approval would be required, and other places they're permitted as a special exception. Is that correct?
Under the current, under the proposed directions, yes.
Okay, so if someone's property was in a zone where this use is a special exception use, they'd have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Correct.
And they would have that standard fee to pay, just as anyone does who requests a variance or special exception.
And right now, though, nobody's complaining about issues with this.
Right now, we're ignoring it. There are uses out there that technically are not permitted. Should this not go through, we will now have to go out and order cease and desist issues, or cease and desist orders.
If we don't approve this, we actually put more of a burden on the people who are, there's a bunch of them out there,
Yes.
bunch of them operating,
Yes,
and we actually put more of a burden on them. If we actually have the people power to go out and enforce it, which we've never done, hence the reason we're here.
correct.
That's what I got from the planning commission in all of our meetings concerning this. I mean, nobody likes to put more regulations out there, but they're already breaking the regulations.
Effectively, what you have happening now are commercial businesses within residential areas. That's what's happening.
Right.
When you establish this type of use, you're establishing a commercial use within a residential area. To be perfectly honest, there's probably tons of them out there we don't know about, nor do we actually take any action upon. However, if somebody needs a business license, or if they need a business loan, or anything like that, whereby an entity would seek to see a zoning certification, then they would be required to come to our office, get the zoning certification in order for them to get the business license or the loan or whatever. If they do not have the zoning certification, they are non-compliant, and therefore they would have to cease and desist that commercial use, just as any other commercial use in a residential area. So what we're seeking to do here is just simply put something into the ordinance to allow these uses to exist, so that at such time somebody wants to open that type of business in a commercial area, in a residential area, they could do so. Again, it would be at the same expense as any other commercial use that would want to go into a residential area, or even in a commercial area for that matter. So basically what we're trying to accomplish here today is to establish a new use and allow that to be permitted as people have asked us to. Just as a background, this may help. I can't remember how far back this goes. The commissioners were approached by several of these types of businesses that operate in Washington County, asking for this use to be introduced and included within the zoning ordinance. And the commissioners then asked staff to then move forward with implementing this. So it's not, I wouldn't look at this in terms of adding additional regulation, so much as putting things in place so that if somebody wishes to implement a new commercial use, we're giving them that flexibility. They simply would have to comply with the regulations just like any other commercial use.
So if we do this today, and I appreciate that, because it gives me a little bit of background. If we do this today, there are 200, 300 of these little places that are gonna have to come in and get authorized.
Yeah, Theoretically, yes, they would have to come in and get their zoning certifications and so forth.
Jill,
Or
again,
they
this
would be
is-
in,
Go ahead.
or they would be breaking the law, which they're already breaking the law.
Non-compliant,
Yes.
yeah.
And you're asking
All
for a
right.
consensus today, this comes back for a public hearing to approve the?
We had the public hearing last week, we
Yeah,
would come
this
back
is
for a
to
formal
approve.
vote.
Okay,
I'm
It's a
simply asking.
consensus- It's a consensus to give my office direction to prepare the final ordinance.
Findings of fact.
Has there been anybody
No finding
complain
of
about
fact.
this? I mean, we've never heard anything in planning, people calling in and complaining.
There's a couple, it comes from both sides. We receive complaints from those who wish to implement the business and can't get the zoning certifications because it's not a permitted use.
Right.
So we get complaints from that perspective. We also do get complaints every once in a while, and it's usually your typical, the neighbors already have an existing issue between them, and it's just sort of.
You know, my advice to any Airbnb would be comply, because
Yeah.
could you imagine sitting in court and your place burned down and the judge and the lawyer say, well, they weren't even complied to operate as an Airbnb, they were out of code. I mean, I always think of the liability on everything.
Yeah,
And it'd be my suggestion to go ahead and do it,
yeah,
because you're doing it anyway, and you might have a lot of liability there because you're really not approved.
yeah. And there may be some that will still exist that don't know or aren't aware of the fact that they would need a zoning certification or something like that. So they could very well be operating and we wouldn't know until we receive a complaint, or we can start educating people on the fact that you would need, because it is a commercial use, you would just need the zoning certifications and so forth. That is another point that I would probably make to this, is that a lot of commercial uses, we require a site plan to be completed, which is an additional expense. In this specific case, we said there's really no need for that, because there's really nothing to the exterior or even, that would be outwardly obvious to the public that we would really require a site plan to be done anyway. So the only thing we would require is to make sure that they have the parking available, or as you talked about last week, that they could get a variance from the parking if you have a courtesy service that would go out and pick you up or bring you to the locations. So we made this as absolutely simplistic as we possibly could, given the fact that it is a commercial use in a residential area, and we do want to protect all of our citizens. So we want to protect the citizens who want to start the business, so that they are aware of what they're getting into and what the liabilities are and what the regulations are. We also want to protect the citizens who live in an area who don't want the commercialized use, so that they have an opportunity to come in and speak and say, I didn't move into this neighborhood for commercial uses to come in and run me out, or something like that. So we're trying to protect both sides of the coin here, and I think this strikes that balance, with
I'd
the
motion to
absolute
approve.
least.
well, we need a consensus,
It's just
not
a
a motion.
consensus.
Is that
Okay,
what
I'm
we're looking
okay
for, a
with
consensus to
So-
approve or deny?
Yeah, I just have another question, sir.
Sure.
How does this affect subleasing? If I rent a home in a community, does it affect any of the subleasing if I wanna?
No, again, we talked about that last week, that if you want to rent your home out for 4, 5, 6 months, a year, whatever.
I
No.
might only wanna rent it out for a couple of days a month.
If you're doing it on a minimal basis, chances are we're not gonna know about it, and we're probably not going to have a discussion about it, to be honest with you. Those types of uses, I'll be very honest with you, these types of uses are going to be extremely difficult to enforce. We're not gonna go out there and look for them. We won't go out and look for them. They are really gonna be complaint driven, to be very blunt.
I didn't want to end up in a situation, I had 3 businesses in Hagerstown. And things are said in the beginning, when you create rules, government does, they say this is how it's gonna go. And then over the course, it's just made more stringent, harder to deal with, more money you pay out. It just becomes more and more oversight, government in our business. And that's the problem I have with it. But if they can get in trouble right now anyway, and this just kind of cleans things up, I guess I don't have a problem with it. It's just, my bigger concern is starting to create a bunch of stuff for these small, that probably don't do a lot of business anyway.
Commissioners, any more comments? Is there a consensus to approve or deny?
The people along the C&O Canal.
So I'm in favor of moving forward with this. My major concern was addressed about an opportunity for the one parking space per bedroom requirement to be looked at kind of on a case-by-case basis. Like I mentioned, I know some businesses that operate along the Appalachian Trail or the C&O Canal where people get to their place to spend the night, not in a car, but on a bicycle or by foot. And, you know, you also have maybe a single-family home, 3-bedroom. You have a family in one vehicle. So it doesn't make sense that you also need to allocate a parking spot for each kid or child that may spend the night there too. So long as that's lenient and flexible, I'm okay with moving forward.
All right. Anybody else comment? Consensus to approve or deny? Approve?
Yeah, approve.
Consensus to approve? Wayne, Terry?
You just need 3. I'm not ready to move forward today.
Okay,
but if you get your votes,
yeah,
you
we
go
got
ahead.
at least 4 to approve. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next up, come on forward, come on down, as they say. Hotel rental tax funding request, Miss Marilyn Paget lease agreement. Susan Buchanan, please introduce yourself and the guests and topic.
Good morning, Susan Buchanan, Director, Office of Grant Management, and here with me this morning, Jessica Green, Executive Director of the Maryland Theater Incorporated. We're both here this morning because as part of a community effort to retain the Miss Maryland pageant in Hagerstown, Maryland, the Maryland Theater is requesting the county support a new 5-year contract between the City of Hagerstown, the Maryland Theater Association Incorporated, the Carroll County Foundation Incorporated, and the county. The contract obligates the county to provide a maximum of $16,000 annually for 5 years towards the annual rental costs of the Maryland Theater for the pageant. The lease period will be for June 2022 through 2026. The county has participated in a similar lease agreement for this event for the periods 2011 through 2016 and 2017 through 2021. The amount of funds contributed by the county has remained constant through each lease renewal. Per the contract, the costs for each party are as follows. The obligation of Carroll County Foundation, which represents Miss Maryland pageant, is $11,890. The obligation of the City of Hagerstown, $8,000. Obligation of the county, $16,000, for total annual rental costs of $35,890. The Miss Maryland pageant generates hotel night stays and stimulates support of county businesses, restaurants, and attractions. Therefore, the event and the support of this contract would be an eligible use of hotel rental tax funding. If you have any questions related to the
Miss
contract.
Maryland's this
or any
week, isn't
event.
it, Jessica?
It is this year. They're doing an abbreviated version due to the pandemic. We're only hosting the top 10 contestants each night.
Yeah, and they don't have the annual luncheon this year either.
Yeah, there's no hotel stays. The teens come in on Friday for a 16-hour day, and then the contestants Saturday for the same. So nobody's staying, no meals, nothing like that.
Right, is there a motion?
I'll just say, and the amount that the county's contributing this year is less.
Yes. It is,
It
it
less
is,
because-
yeah,
because of that.
significantly
Is
less.
there a motion to approve?
I'll
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Jessica
Thank
Green,
you.
we haven't seen you here in about
I
4
know.
years.
I promise I'll come back.
Thank you very much.
I
For a
bet you're
much
happy.
larger
We
building.
just want you to come up, that's really what we wanted.
He came for the rain.
I
Yeah.
bet you're happy things are opening up down there, aren't you?
Very happy. We hosted about, I think, 36 events in the month of May and 12 events last week alone in a 7-day period. So summer's obviously our slowest season just because people like to be outside, but fall is looking packed too. So the future is bright.
Good. Okay.
Good.
Thank
That
you.
concludes our open agenda. Motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go in closed session.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, everybody must leave the facility, leave the room. I'll be out. I'll be back. Everybody leaves. Mike, I think we have you later.